Good morning to everybody out there in the parent-tween connection world. I'm super excited to be coming to you live with Nick Gipson of Gipson Cyber today. For those of you I haven't had the opportunity to meet, I'm Clarissa Constantine, and I'm the founder of the Parent-Tween Connection, and we are where parents go when they don't know where to go. Good morning, Nick. Thanks so much for being with me.
Thanks so much, Clarissa. I'm happy to be here.
Awesome. So many families recognize that we are raising kids today in a world that's so very different than the one that we grew up in, largely
Mm.
because of the technology that exists. And yesterday, we had a great interview with a retired educator who was talking about some of the benefits about AI and of AI and how we can use some of this really cool new technology in positive, fabulous, supportive new ways. And at the same time, we also need to be aware of some of the dangers. And I know that you see this all too frequently in the world that you live in of cybersecurity. So I'm really excited for today's conversation. For folks listening in, we're going to have two parts to the conversation. The first part with Nick is going to be what every parent needs to know about sextortion. And not only do you need to know it, but you need to know this so that you can go tell talk with your kids about it, start conversations with them. But then in our second part, which is expressly for members of Parent Tween Village, excuse me, we're going to be talking about AI trickery and scams. So kind of the opposite of the conversation that we had yesterday with Kathy Gunter. So Nick, let's just jump right in. Anything with the letters SEX in it draws attention and, kids are intrigued going, what the heck do I do with this? It's new. We're exploring all these things, right? And parents are like, oh my God, what do we do with this? Because my kids are exploring and all of these things. So where do we even start with this craziness?
Well, it definitely starts with open communication, like you were just mentioning, talking with your kids about the dangers and how it's an actual prevalent thing. I think I don't know the exact number, but it's in the teens last year of people that died of young people that died by suicide because of these sextortion scams. And just if anyone doesn't know what that means, I'll kind of break it down for you if you don't mind.
Sure. Yeah.
Sextortion is a scam in which someone will pretend to be a person of similar age to their victim.
Hmm.
They will then uh, elicit an online relationship with them, over social media or over text messaging or WhatsApp or whatever, and then they will elicit pictures of them. So they'll uh, coerce them into taking nude photos or boudoir photos of them and sending them to them. Once that happens, they flip the script and say, "Now that I have these pictures, you're going to pay me money, or I'm
Hmm.
going to post them online and send them all to your contacts and friends."
Now, is this
Um,
expressly, by definition, limited to pictures and images? Could it also be like if they were to engage them in conversation about acts and things like that?
yes, yes, that is possible, but it's mostly about the pictures and videos and images
Okay.
because of twofold. There's two types of people out there. There's one that are trying to just get money, and then there's one that are trying to bolster up the human trafficking portion
Mhm.
of the world
Got it. Okay.
by, great, I got images of a 14-year-old girl, now I'm gonna go sell them online.
Got it. Okay. So that's a great place to start is the definition of what it actually is. So thanks for taking us back to that basics, those
Yeah.
basics. So then how do we they're clearly impersonating, right? And kids might be like, "Oh, but that's illegal. Like we could charge them, we could sue them, but da da da." Not wrong, but there's money involved in that. So I like the fact that you said that we have to start out with clear communications. So even if it's people that they think they can trust, friends. I know I've had
Mm.
situations where I've been like, "Wow, I thought that person was a friend," and turns out they're not a friend. So
Yes.
how can we guide our students to recognize some of what's going on because they're young? The cerebral cortex is the last thing to finish forming. We talk about this a lot here at Parent Tween is, they look like young adults, but their brains are still lagging behind their bodies just because physiologically that's the last thing to develop. What kinds of things do they need to be aware of to try to prevent falling into that trap?
The biggest thing is I tell people that the internet is written in stone. It's it's digital, it's completely not physical at all,
Mhm,
but yet it is copied so much on all the different servers around the world to make sure that we can still access pages and the internet keeps running, that it's
mhm,
essentially always gonna be there. There's sites that will take you back to the back pages people can find. I mean, we've seen in the political realm, oh, someone said
mhm,
something 10 years ago and now they're getting in trouble for it now on some page. That because it never goes away ever. And I
mhm.
think if we have the first thing you need to instill in any child that's gonna get devices is that what they do on the internet is open to the world and forever.
Say that one more time
I
again
think
through a
people are
little spotty on my end. It opened the world and
and it's open to the world and it's forever. It's always gonna be there.
ah, right. So, you know, we hear that come up a lot on Snapchat. "Oh, but it disappears in 30 seconds." Ladies and gentlemen, friends, family, whatever gender you might be, whatever race you might be, wherever you might be listening, Nick has background in the American military and Department of Defense, and he does this professionally. If he's telling you that it lives forever, it lives forever. It can be tracked. Do not forget that. I think that might be the most important takeaway for kids, period. So then, how do families have these conversations? Because so many parents, frankly, are intimidated by a lot of the technology that we have right now because we don't understand it. I say we, like somewhat older generation, right? We don't necessarily understand all of it. We don't use it in the same way that the kids do. How do we make
Yeah.
sure that we educate ourselves and then to start these conversations, but then continue the conversations?
Well, I think the first if you're on looking at this podcast, I think you're definitely on the right track.
Mhm.
Because educating yourself in any way about the you should be educating yourself on the specific devices and applications that your child uses. And I was before coming into the podcast, I was like, well, what do I like recommend to people? And I can't really up and recommend just a straight up this is the service or product that you should use because it really depends on what the devices they're using, what apps they're using, how they're using them, that sort of thing. Are they on a computer
Mhm.
or a phone or a tablet or whatever? So you need to educate yourself on what you've given your kids or what your kids have and
Mhm.
the apps that they are using on their phone and the social media apps that they are using. You should when I say familiarize yourself, I mean be cognizant of how to navigate the system, how to get
Mhm.
around to the settings, how to find biggest thing, how to find the parental controls. All of those
Mhm.
things, devices as well as social media now have parental controls.
Mhm.
Um, for example, and this is just an example, like my kids have Fire tablets. I use Amazon Kids Plus because it locks the tablet down. It can track it, and monitor. I can shut internet traffic off and do all the things I need to do. Um, if but that's not if your kids don't have a Fire tablet, that doesn't work for you. Like, you know
Sure.
what I mean? If they have an iPad, that's different. You have to find another application. So find something that works for you, but gives you uh, full control and access over the device and all of the content that is being put into that device.
Right.
Uh, yes, it is an invasion of privacy. Um, in my mind, I have two small children, an 11-year-old tween, and I don't care. Uh,
Fair. Well, I mean, there's
um,
invasion of privacy potentially in that it is there, if you have gifted it to them, I can see that. And we're also talking about their safety and the fact that they're young and
yes,
they're not
that's
going
what I'm
to
saying. Yeah,
always make the best decisions, and that's what adults are for in their world. And then just to be
yeah.
clear, with these array of devices, you have services that can help families decide or determine some of those programs and apps and things that can help keep the family safe, and that you're not exclusively here saying, "Hey, here's information expressly from the goodness of your heart." There are services that you offer that can help with that as well.
Yes, yes, I could help with that. I can consult on that, and just be a
Okay.
great resource for anyone that's out there for sure.
Sure. And so, again, educating ourselves as the adults in the world, number one. Number two, making sure that we're familiar with the app, or with the device, with the apps that are available, and then checking
Mhm.
regularly, I imagine. I know
Yes.
that's something you and I have talked about before with any kind of device. I think it makes sense to have a contract with the kiddos.
Mm.
These are the terms of how you use the device and when it's appropriate and when it's not, whether it's allowed in the bedroom, whether it's not allowed in the bedroom, whether it's, there's still plenty of families that are like, no, computers are in the living room, end of story, because that way, if you're using it, we can see what's going on and we know that we can pay attention, we can monitor, and we can help keep you safe. Many families choose not to let phones in bedrooms. Phones stay in mom and dad's room overnight, something like that. So then, yeah, having the contract, let's go back for just a second to some of the behaviors of the perpetrators of these crimes and the
Mhm.
challenges that can come up. What are some of the behaviors that we can educate our kids to pay attention to so that they can monitor to their own end or to some extent, right? And they can be aware of things on their end.
Yes, anytime that you're only conversing with a person over over some sort of media, even if it's
Hmm.
honestly, even if it's Zoom nowadays, because there's plenty of ways to fake that and deep
Mm.
fake Zoom to have someone to have. I mean, just Google deep fake Zoom interviews and you'll see people doing that. Um, it's
I
seriously,
had no
it'll
idea what
just
the
be,
deep
it'll
fake.
look like me, it'll look like this, but it'll be like, I'll look like Wesley Snipes or something, and then it'll come and I'll be able to talk, but it'll be Wesley Snipes' voice coming out. That's the kind of stuff that we're dealing with now. You can't, unless you've
Wow.
met a person in person, you cannot verify who they are at all.
Uh-huh. Okay.
Um,
Good to know.
so
I learned something today.
yeah, so that's the first thing that we should be looking out for. If the person on the other end is avoiding physical meetups, um, physical like um, talking on the phone a little bit, but they can do voice changing. More like just the physicality of things. They don't want to write letters, or they don't want to give out their address, or something along those lines. They don't give a lot of information about their personal life, uh, that sort of thing.
Mhm.
It, it's very much it's a scam. It's a scam in the purest sense because they're trying to be a Trojan horse. They're trying to say, "Oh yeah, I'm a 14-year-old boy that likes skateboarding and video games, and talking to this other 14-year-old girl, and that's what they think that we're on. Oh yeah, I'm also in Detroit. You're in Detroit too? Cool." Um, and then they never actually meet up, or never actually they might send something to your house, but never actually send anything. The address doesn't go anywhere. You know what I mean? It's from
Mhm.
Amazon, something like that. There's just a lot of weird things that you'll get a spidey sense about. I call it a spidey sense, and every parent will get that.
Mhm.
Don't
Mhm.
ignore that stuff. Like,
Mhm.
if you feel that if it's a weird relationship, like, who's Steven? Well, I've never met him. I just met him online. Well, that's weird. He doesn't go to your school.
Mhm.
Like, who else do you need to talk to that doesn't go to your school and doesn't live in this house?
Right. Right, that's reasonable. And again, I think that comes back to some of the parameters that we can set in a contract with the teens or the tweens, even the younger ones. Like you said, fire tablets. I mean, you've got that for 7 and 8-year-old kids. If there's
Mhm.
any kind of engagement, we need to have a conversation with mom and dad. And like back to your point of checking the device regularly, checking the settings, which we're going to talk about settings here in just a minute. Um, and again, only connecting with trusted individuals, people whose identity you can verify and recognizing, and of course you talked about meeting up in person, which is it's in its own way a dicey proposition with teens and tweens, right? Because we don't necessarily want them sneaking out to try to go connect with these folks, and we're
Mhm.
not necessarily going to condone meeting up
Oh,
with them
that's
in
true. Yeah.
person if we can't confirm identity, right? So that's the next step that I hear in my head, I hear parents talking about. But it's also, you're talking about this from the realm of uh perpetrators who are professional con artists really is
Mhm.
there's no other way to put it, right? To your point, they're either trying to extort money directly from the victim, or they're trying to take those and go make money on the dark market, on a
Yeah.
hidden in the underworld, as it were. But then there's also the fact, goodness, this is going back a number of years. We had a guest who was a criminal defense attorney in Colorado talking about child sex rings and child pornography.
Mhm.
That even if it's somebody that you can identify or whose identity you can confirm, going and sending some of those pictures can still get kids into a ton of trouble legally, particularly if we're talking about, an older teenager and a younger teenager. Granted, the statutes vary from state to state across the US, and I'm sure internationally, these internet is not a US issue. Like the
Mhm.
conversation that we're having applies in many, many places beyond the US, and going, hey, even if you think that you can trust somebody, it's your boyfriend, it's your girlfriend, it's somebody you have a crush on. I've had it happen to me. I shared things where I was like, wow, I really probably shouldn't have put that in writing. And now this person isn't my friend anymore. And that's me as an adult. What do
Mhm.
you recommend to families as far as tools? You mentioned Amazon 360. Are there other tools that you recommend to help protect kids?
Yes, and one before I get into that, just that whole thing of sending images to friends that you know, it harkens back to our original conversation of that the internet is written in stone. It doesn't matter if, like you said, it doesn't matter if that person's a friend now, they might not be a friend later. Or
Right.
they might get I live in this world. They might get hacked and then your photos become the hacker's photos. You
Correct.
never know.
Correct.
But
Hmm.
so back to the devices and applications. There's a number of different things that are out there. There's things called Life 360. There's uh, honestly, there's a plethora of things. That's why I was saying that it
Hmm.
depends on the devices and apps that you're using.
Sure.
Learn and
Okay.
understand those devices, and then go find tools. Google it. Like your kid has a iPhone 15. What are some kid tracking apps for iPhone 15? And it'll pop up and it'll come up and you can pick the features and things that you want to do. And then there just as many of social media apps that are out there, there's monitoring apps too. Um,
Hmm. Hmm.
because it branches from the business world where business owners don't want people on social media during the day. So but now they've adapted that towards children and families. So it does location tracking, it
Hmm.
does um what we would call in the industry mobile device management. Basically, it tracks all the
Hmm.
data and ongoing on the device, and can even wipe it remotely if it gets lost or stolen. Um,
Hmm.
so there's a lot of these things that are out there. As far as social media and apps go, the majority of social media have their own parental settings within their apps. But there are
Hmm.
some, I can't think of any off the top of my head or at this point, but again, Google's your friend here. Uh, there are some applications that you can connect your social media apps to, and it's like a monitoring application for your kids' social media. Uh, it will
Hmm.
it will monitor things like their posts for certain keywords. Um, it'll links that they've clicked on, people that message them, like all it basically gives you almost full access to their entire thing. That you can remove posts, you can take posts down, without having to get into their account to do it.
Got it. And going to social media, period. There is an ongoing conversation about whether kids should have it, when kids should
Mhm.
have it, this, that, and the other thing. And I don't want us to get into telling families what to do in terms of making those
Yeah.
decisions, but there's plenty of information out there that social media in general is more negative for the teenage experience than positive.
Mhm.
It can contribute to an awful lot of mental health challenges, and at the same so there's definitely something to be said for prove to me that there's good and I'll let you have it, and really there's no data out there that shows that it is good for kids, but the fact is it's part of their world, and so
Yeah.
there's also the question about Do we let them have it and monitor and teach them how to use it safely, or do we completely crack down, say no, not at all, and then let them explore some of these things independently when the time comes, perhaps, once they're of legal age? That's a completely different conversation. But these conversations, I'm a believer that connection comes from knowing what to say and do, as well as knowing when and how to say and do it. And so bringing professionals like you, Nick, in to have conversations with families and to educate them is that first part. It's helping parents know what to say and do. And then it carries on, especially in Parent Tween Village and conversations that we have there about how to continue to broach these conversations. But the one thing that I want to implore upon parents is that it is our job as the adults to start these conversations. Kids aren't going to, nor should they be held responsible for starting these conversations. We're the ones with the world's experience, or with the real world experience. We're the ones with the fully formed frontal, cerebral cortex. We have to take the initiative on these conversations. And sometimes that's a hard conversation. Who wants to talk about things like this with their kids?
Mm.
I can promise you there are worse outcomes that you would rather avoid, that having conversations like this can help to lessen the likelihood of.
Yeah. And my kids definitely think that I'm the paranoid dad, but I live in this world and I see it every day, and I'm just so cautious about it. And even my kids will get around my secure. I've mentioned that before, Calissa, in our other personal conversations. Like my daughter has gotten around my security controls before. She's just the kids can figure it out. They're like little prisoners. They can just figure it out because they're there every day. Uh, but yeah,
Well, and
so
if your kids can do
w-
it.
yes, yes, exactly. And so anything can happen to anyone, is what I'm saying. Like I I have the best of the best software available to me in the world, and yet I still can slip up. I still get past it. I still have to go and figure it out. Like, for example, my kids have, like saying the Amazon Plus app, but that doesn't control the actual applications themselves. So, for example, Roblox, you down,
Mhm,
Roblox is awesome. It's just a world you can go into. Predators are on Roblox
mhm,
looking to chat with your children.
mhm,
And, oh, look, they just it's a open world, and they think, "Oh, they just look like this Roblox character," and the kids don't really realize that it's another person on the other side, and it might not be
mhm.
the person they say that they are. So you have to go in I have
Absolutely.
to go into that app, and then I have to go into all the other apps like Disney Plus and Netflix, and make sure that all the parental controls are set. You have to, like you just said, you have to be the one to take the step to go and do that. Kids are not going to do
Mhm.
that. They don't know how to do it. If they did, why would anyone wanna restrict themselves?
Right. That's our jobs as the adults.
Yeah,
Awesome.
exactly.
So if anybody who's tuning in wants to get more information or support, I know Nick has mentioned several times that Google is your friend. You can find Nick at gibsoncyber.com. It's Gipson cyber.com. I'm saying that right, correct?
Yes, mhm.
Okay, good. Just had a momentary brain space. And then, Nick, I like to wrap up all of our conversations with our guests by asking which of the foundations of connection resonates the most with you, either as a professional or as a father. And so, for folks who are listening in who have not heard of the foundations of connection, they are downloadable right from our website at parenttweenconnection.com. And basically, the first letter of each concept spells out the word connection. So we start with create a safe place, observe, non judgment, nod and smile, explore, challenge your truths or curiosity. E, wait, C, T is take your time. I lost my way in the word. T is take your time. I is innovate. O is own your own story. And then the last N is nurture. So, Nick, which of those do you think pops up most for you in this circumstance?
I mean, I think it kinda hits the nail on the head with innovate. Um, I'm always trying to be innovative in my job. This is, I'm a technical company, but just in my everyday, especially with my kids, I'm trying to innovate different ways for them to be safe, um, and what
Awesome.
works for our family and what for our and how we operate.
Awesome. Awesome, awesome. All right, well, with that, we are going to say over and out. Nick, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for educating us, and, we will be heading over to Parent Tween Village here momentarily to talk about, again, AI, trickery, and scams. For anybody who hasn't yet, make sure that you do subscribe to our YouTube channel so you get notified of upcoming conversations with professionals like Nick, and if you are interested in more of our exclusive conversations, check out parenttweenconnection.com/Parent Tween Village. Thanks so much, Nick. I'm super glad that you were able to join us today.
Yeah, thank you for having me.